Ionia looks like paradise. Soft wind, bamboo forests, morning light on the temples. The culture promises harmony. It promises that discipline leads to peace. Look closer. Dig beneath the stillness. What you find is not harmony. It is silence. A silence built from blood, from regret, from fear so old it became wisdom. He grew up in that silence. A small boy. Cold stone steps. The temple of the Kinkou Order. He belonged nowhere. He had no name that meant anything. He was looking for a place. He did not know what that would cost him. His name was Zed. And the shadow that followed him was not always darkness. Once, it had been something else entirely. Subscribe if you are new. A new League of Legends story every week. This one is about what happens when justice and discipline cannot exist in the same person. The master who found him was called Kusho. He was exceptional. His understanding of balance was not theoretical. It was lived. His authority did not come from rank. It came from decades of becoming what he believed. He took the nameless boy from the steppes. He gave him a place, a practice, a framework. He also gave him something he did not intend, a standard. Growing up with Kusho meant growing up with his son. His son would one day be called Shen. Shen made the teaching look effortless. He was balanced in a way that seemed native, calm in a way that required no visible effort. He embodied the order's values completely. You could not tell where the person ended and the ideal began. The boy who would become Zed was none of these things. He was not undisciplined. He was ferociously committed. He worked longer than anyone required. He pushed past every point where others stopped. He treated limitation as a personal insult. But his relationship with discipline was different. Shen practiced because practice led to balance. Zed practiced because something inside him needed an outlet. The fire was not the problem. The fire was what made him exceptional. The fire was also what made everything that followed possible. He rose fast. Faster than almost anyone before him. His skills with shadow techniques were remarkable. There was something in his affinity for dark spaces, for the gap between one movement and the next, for the things that exist where light does not reach. It went beyond what training alone could explain. The other students felt it. They could not explain what he had that they did not. But they felt the difference. Master Kusho noticed. He was, in almost every way, the right teacher. He had spent a lifetime becoming what he believed. He gave what he had. But the right teacher can only give what the discipline contains. The discipline contained balance. Balance required restraint, always restraint, even when restraint felt like surrender, even when Ionia was burning outside the walls, and the order kept its eyes closed, and called that wisdom. Then the golden demon appeared. His name was Jhin. He was an artist. His medium was not paint or stone. It was the human body. His victims were arranged with intention. The murders were not frenzied. They were composed. They were, in a way that was hard to admit, beautiful. Most people could not see it that way. The young man who would become Zed could. This frightened him. He told no one. The pursuit lasted years. It moved through every dark province of Ionia. Through rain and silence. Through the dread of following something that wanted to be followed. When it ended, when they finally had Jhin cornered, the young man raised his blade. Kusho stopped him. Justice is not served by anger. Balance requires proper channels. The law, the institution, the process. The young man did not hear wisdom. He heard something breaking inside him. Something that had been under pressure for a long time. Something that had held because the discipline was genuine. The respect was genuine. The belief that the order understood something he did not was genuine. In that single moment, at the end of that pursuit, with Jhin breathing in front of him, that belief ended. Jhin went to a cell. The young man returned to the temple. He carried something new. Not anger. Anger was familiar. This was quieter. A doubt. Not about the Order's power, about its relationship to justice. About whether balance was adequate to a world that contained Jhin. Years passed. The doubt did not fade. It grew. Small doubts formed around the first one. They clustered. They gained weight. He carried all of them. Every morning in the training courtyard. Every evening in meditation. Every time another Ionian village burned. Every family displaced. Every piece of a culture reduced to ash. Noxus moved through Ionia with the logic of empires. Systematic, comprehensive, indifferent. The Order meditated. The Order maintained balance. The Order did not fight. He could not be still. The night he went to the Forbidden Archive was not sudden. It was the end of a long process, years of pressure building against genuine discipline, until something gave. The black box was there, ancient, sealed. The warnings assumed he would be deterred. He was not. When he opened it, the shadows did not attack. They recognized him. They moved toward him. Not hostile, not alien, familiar. Whatever lived in that box had been waiting for him. He brought it back up. He went to Kusho. He asked directly, "Give me permission to use the full power of shadow. Not the partial version the Order permits. The complete version. Let me take the fight to Noxus. Let me stop waiting for balance to reassert itself." Kusho refused. The Master's reasons were not wrong, not by the logic of what he believed. The argument for restraint. For the long view, it was coherent, within its own framework. But the framework was the problem. What Kusho called balance, he now called surrender. He called it choosing principle over action. Because action was frightening, and principle was not. That night he left. He was not alone. Others had reached the same point. He had been the one able to name what they all felt. In naming it, he gave it a direction. The Shadow Order formed in the space that Kinkou refused to fill. They marked themselves. Shadow tattoos. Not decoration. Not tradition. Record. Each line a commitment. Each scar a reminder. The discipline was not abandoned. It was redirected. He returned to the temple for the box. He had not planned what he would do if someone was waiting. Kusho was at the gate. The Master held no weapon. He stood in the open. Still. Present, simply there. He said, "You can still come back." The man who had once been his student stood across from him. He felt time go thin. He saw backward through it. A cold stone step. A child who belonged nowhere. A man who gave that child a place. A practice. Something to believe in. And the child, grown into this, had come back for a box. He stepped forward. The darkness moved with him. From him. Through him. Not a weapon exactly. The natural expression of what he had become. Meeting the only obstacle that had ever truly mattered. When it was finished, he held the box. He also held the weight of what finishing it had required. That weight was heavier than the box. It would grow heavier every year that followed. He understood this immediately. He accepted it anyway. The Kinkou Order fell. The Shadow Order rose. Years later, the edge of the Ipool River. A child with a rusted sickle. Eyes that already spoke in the language of shadow. Without having been taught it. The boy's name was Cain. Zed recognized something in those eyes. Not innocence. Potential. Potential that had not yet decided what shape to take. He brought the boy in. He was building something. Not just an order. Not just power. A successor. Someone who might carry what he had built into whatever came next. Someone who might hold the darkness and the purpose. in a ratio he himself had never quite achieved. He knew what the night at the gate had cost him. Not the power, not the skill. Something quieter, something present in a person before they cross certain lines. Absent after. He had noticed its absence the morning after. He had been noticing it ever since. He knew he might have already destroyed the capacity for balance in himself. The knowledge did not slow him. Ionia still bled. The shadows still spoke. And somewhere in the gap between what the world was and what it should be, a man who had Disadahodabaadoras. Chosen darkness kept moving. Through the space where light did not reach. Still looking for justice. In the only places it still lived. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. Every week, a new League of Legends lore. The ones that chose the shadow.